They were young, full of promise, and just beginning their life together in a small, quiet town. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where neighbors knew each other, and violent crime was almost unheard of. But one winter night in 1970 changed all that. What happened inside that modest apartment sent shockwaves through the community and left law enforcement scrambling for answers. The brutality, the sheer senselessness of it, stunned even the most seasoned investigators. 50 years later, questions still linger. Was it random? Was it personal? And why, after all this time, has justice remained just out of reach? This is the story of Terry and Julie Dade. Hello, friends. My name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. In 1970, Junction City was a small, quiet community just 15 miles north of Eugene, Oregon. With a population of around 3,000, it was primarily known for its strong agricultural roots, especially grass seed farming and dairy production. The town's Scandinavian heritage, particularly its Danish influence, was a point of pride, visible in its architecture and community events like the annual Scandinavian Festival, which had started just a few years earlier in 1961 and was growing in popularity. The 1970s in Oregon, like much of the Pacific Northwest, was a time of transition. While cities like Eugene were experiencing cultural shifts driven by the counterculture movement, protests against the Vietnam War, and changes in higher education, Junction City remained relatively quiet, more traditional, more insulated. Violent crime was almost unheard of, and a double homicide felt not just tragic, but almost inconceivable. Terry Lynn Dade, age 19, worked the evening shift at the American Can Company's Junction City paper mill. His 20-year-old wife, Julianne, was a homemaker caring for the couple's 1-year-old son, Mark. The couple, described by neighbors as quiet, had been married only 15 months earlier and moved into Unit 11 of the recently built apartment building at 151 Maple Street in Junction City about 7 weeks before their deaths. They were just a young couple trying to build a life together. While the exact timeline of what happened the night the couple was killed is unknown, we do know that Terry worked his 3 to 11 p.m. shift at the mill, returning home about midnight. The couple went to bed sometime in the early morning hours of January 21, 1970. Possibly between 2 and 3:30 a.m. And then Julie was awakened by someone at the door. The horrific events of that night unfolded quickly. At 4:15 a.m., neighbors in the area of Terry and Julie's apartment were jolted awake by the sound of a woman's desperate screams. A witness reported that he saw a man dragging a screaming woman into a vehicle before leaving the area. A few minutes later, and just over half a mile away, Jake Wacker of 236 Southwest Laurel Street was awake when he heard a woman frantically screaming and pounding on the door of his neighbor, Donald Bodker. He was able to provide a more detailed account of what he saw, telling police that when Bodker opened the door and asked what was going on, the man calmly told him, "She's drunk," before dragging her away from the door and putting her in the car. The man then got out a flashlight and spent several minutes looking around for something before getting into the car and driving away. Eerily, a few minutes later, he returned on foot and searched the area again. He was described as husky, of medium height, and wearing a heavy jacket and pants tucked into his boots. A few minutes later, the Junction City Fire Department was responding to a burning 1962 white Buick station wagon about 3/4 of a mile away on Prairie Road. Underneath was the body of a woman, later confirmed to be Julie. The vehicle belonged to a local man, Norman R. Ferris, age 51, of Trailertown Trailer Court, 950 Highway 99S, who had awoke to the sound of an explosion and saw that his station wagon was on fire. He attempted to put the fire out with a fire extinguisher while neighbors called the fire department. Firefighters arrived at 4:40 a.m. Tragically, Julie had already died. She had been strangled, beaten, and doused with gasoline before being set on fire. This wasn't a panicked act, it was rage. Whoever did this wanted to make sure she didn't survive. Police went door to door to identify her when a woman at Terry and Julie's apartment complex said a woman fitting Julie's description lived there, and she had noticed that the door to their apartment was ajar. Julie's husband, Terry, was found deceased in the couple's bedroom. Their infant son, Mark, miraculously, was found unharmed in his crib. Evidence suggested a truly horrific and sudden attack. Julie had been stunned or knocked out immediately after opening the apartment door. Terry had been killed as he slept. his cause of death being multiple skull fractures. Why would anyone do this? And why now, when they had only just moved into the apartment? Despite tireless work and interviewing dozens of people, no real suspects were ever developed. Detectives were unable to determine a motive for the murders. This has been one of the most baffling aspects of the case for decades. There's no evidence that Terry or Julie lived a high-risk lifestyle. No clear motive, no known enemies, just a quiet young couple trying to build a life together. And yet the violence inflicted on them was personal. It was brutal. The senseless double murder sent shockwaves through the community. Neighbors who had always felt safe in their quiet town were left terrified, locking their doors and living in fear of the killer in their midst. The immediate outpouring of grief was evident. 80 family, friends, and members of the community attended the funeral at the First Christian Church, with Reverend Gilbert Knox officiating. The couple was laid to rest in the Reslon Memorial Park in Junction City. We may never know exactly why Julie opened the door in the early hours of that January morning. Did she recognize the person on the other side? Was it someone she trusted, or someone who made themselves seem trustworthy? Julie's abduction raises even more questions. Why take her from the apartment only to kill her? Why the fire? Was it an attempt to destroy evidence or to send a message? Had someone been watching her, waiting for the right moment? Was this about control, revenge, obsession? More than 5 decades later, the details still haunt us. The killer walked into that apartment, shattered a family, and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a baby boy who would grow up without parents, and a town that never fully recovered from the horror of that night. Someone knows what happened, and maybe, after all this time, it's not too late for the truth to come out. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.